Thank you, everyone. I want to first recognize Sarah Robin in the back of the room, the documentary filmmaker that is working on this special project, focused not only on the problems, but more importantly, solutions. I have the stage, I have the mic, but no one in this room would want to be me. I'm the mom who woke up early on June 23rd, 2020, to find that my 16-year-old son, Carson, with the amazing smile, had quietly hung himself in our garage while our family slept. Carson had just come home from his first night at a job that he worked so hard to get, making pizzas. He wrote his upcoming work schedule on our kitchen calendar, and as a family, we celebrated his success. What went so terribly wrong overnight? We waited until Carson was in 8th grade to give him his first phone, a very old iPhone with no apps on it. But by the time he got to high school, he was begging for Snapchat because that was the way all the kids were connecting. As parents, we would never have anticipated that inexperienced startups like YOLO and LMK would be able to release their dangerous anonymous features to millions of young Snapchat users. Carson had a private Snapchat account, so the over 100 harassing, threatening, and humiliating messages came from his high school Snapchat friends. Carson kept the online abuse to himself, which is typical for teens because they believe they can handle it. He reached out to his abusers and asked them to swipe up and identify themselves so they could talk things out, but no one ever did. He reached out to friends, asking them if they knew who was doing this to him, but no one knew. The final search on his phone was for hacks to find out who was messaging him. This ultimate act of desperation came because these companies had no easy way of following through on their marketing promises that made Carson and young users believe that these new anonymous apps were safe. These policies stated that YOLO would monitor for cyberbullying and reveal the identities of those who do so and ban them from the app. Yet even after Carson's death, when I reached out to YOLO, asking them to follow their own stated policies, I was ignored. To this day, these companies have either been unable or unwilling to reveal the identities of Carson's tormentors. But currently, social media companies don't have to respond to parents or young users with an online crisis. They don't have to follow their own policies or community guidelines. Social media companies claim that Section 230 provides them complete immunity from lawsuits. They run their companies with the motto, move fast and break things. Those things are our children. Now, let's imagine a world where a young, inexperienced app developer with a get-rich-quick scheme approaches a large social media platform. But this time, the large platform reminds the app developer that federal legislation has passed, and now this industry is required by law to have a duty of care to their millions of young users, which includes the prevention and mitigation of online harms in the operation of their product and the design. This includes cyberbullying and suicide. The large platforms will not risk violating federal legislation, and they terminate all further conversations with the app developer. Imagine a world where my 16-year-old son, who should be turning 20 next month, is still alive going to college, and has a bright future before him. But that's not the reality our family lives with every day. But it could be for the next family out there. If Congress would finally pass responsible online safeguards like the Kids Online Safety Act, young lives will be spared from the next harmful feature because these companies will finally be forced to put our children above their profits. Let's hope this imagined world becomes a reality soon, because I think we can all agree that we like that world better than the one we're living in today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're well. My name is Arielle Geismar. I'm a content creator, digital and mental wellness advocate, and a tech policy strategist. I've been organizing around issues that matter to young people since the age of 16, encompassing areas in mental health, LGBTQ+ rights, technology ethics, and more. As an advocate, I work with government agencies, startups, nonprofits, and other stakeholders to advise on youth ethics and tech interactions. As a digital mental health educator, I host daily self-care check-ins on my social media. I've been honored to be one of Teen Vogue's 21 Under 21, and I'm a core member at Design It For Us, a first-of-its-kind youth coalition to achieve key policy reforms around safer online platforms. We're here today to create change, to take action, or, in my words, to turn the fish around. You don't get that reference yet, but you're about to in a minute. Recently, I penned a forward for a report with Fair Play, documenting how LGBTQ+ youth online face serious harms as a result of manipulative social media platform design. My identity is disproportionately targeted and commodified based on intentional decisions. Safeguards are needed and accountability is crucial. Big tech companies prey on vulnerabilities they believe would extend our engagement. Their choices correlate to declining mental health and well-being among a community already fighting day in and day out. Simply put, when queer youth are under attack, we create digital spaces. They are our home and they are our right. They are life-saving. The last thing we need is to be unsafe there too. Protections for queer youth embedded in the design of the digital world would enable us to grow and thrive. Mental health advocacy isn't just a passion for me, it's personal. I lost a close friend to suicide when I was in high school. Frankie was bright, funny, and a major catalyst for my focus in mental health. Mental health and safe online platforms are inextricably linked. As a college senior now, I'm thinking about how Frankie and I never got to spend this time in our lives together. But when I think about my experience in student social justice organizing, it feels like she's always been here. So let me share some of the lessons that she taught me with all of you. The little moments we shared made me who I am today, and moreover, they've made me the advocate that I am today. We can take her lessons in our policy work. Frankie was one of the most fashion-forward people I have ever met. She wasn't afraid to be bold, to try new patterns, to put new pieces together. As we explore policy solutions, be bold. Look for old patterns in what research tells us. Look for new patterns when creating new platforms. Let's try putting new pieces together, even when we're certain that they don't go. We may be surprised. Frankie and I showed up for each other, supported each other. As we go through our policy work on creating a more just internet, take care of one another. Check in with your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, and ask how they're doing today. Tech ethics organizing can be a little bit different than other forms of organizing. At the end of the day, when we're tired, when we need a break, we can sometimes become part of the system that we're trying to regulate. It's tough to just want to scroll at the end of the day when we know what social media consumption does to us. It's not our fault. Don't beat yourself up over it. When it's time to relax, relax. And when it's time to fight, fight. Frankie was incredibly welcoming. As we think about technology, organizing, and creating platform, I encourage you to welcome young people into our work. Don't create policy around social media about us without us. Ask questions early and often. Young people are a stronghold within this space, and we deserve a seat at the table. Frankie and I took marine biology together in high school. One time, we were diagramming a real fish on a tray in front of us, matching anatomy. We were struggling to match the real fish to the diagram when the reality was much more unsavory than the piece of paper that we'd studied. As we struggled, Frankie took the tray with the fish and turned it around. Physically. We'd been going about it upside down and didn't realize it, making it much harder for ourselves. One simple act and our perspective was changed. As policymakers, as change makers, as people in space together, sometimes the answer is actually just in front of us. Sometimes the answer is just working with a friend and working together. Turning the fish gave us a new perspective, and neither of us could have done it alone. As we go into today, into everything that we're going to build, think about the perspectives that you can gain, the conversations that you can have, the ideas you can form, and the people that you can meet. It's our responsibility to take care of young people through action, through policy, through collaborating and pushing forward and pushing further than big tech tells us to. Today and every single day, turn the fish. I think you'll see something new. Thank you.
Some hard acts to follow. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydnie Collins. I'm a freshman at Howard University, and I'm also the founder, CEO, and host of my own international podcast called Perfect Timing. I'm about to tell you a story of how I turned my greatest self-destructor into my greatest reason to live. Before I could even spell the word identity, it became my God-ordained duty to become the quintessential example of the perfect daughter, student, friend, and human. Do you need someone to fulfill every duty that you have and exceed your expectations every time? I got you. Do you need someone to stand in as an unfaltering supporting character at your every bump in the road? I'm your girl. I carried these responsibilities with no problem. However, I let the slack eat me up inside. In a family of 7, I'm the middle child, and I made it a point to try and stay out of the way. I took the saying, "You are your biggest critic," seriously, but not in the way that you think. I challenged myself daily. I wrote notes to myself that proved my bullies right. If there was any opportunity to denounce my name and thrash all of the good, potential, and space for growth left inside of me, I'd take it. I wore the name failure like a name tag. Eventually, the emotional baggage and anxiety from my verbal abuse caught up with me, but I was supposed to be the strong, self-sufficient, and unmoving pillar in everyone else's world. And if that pillar ever weakened, far be it for me to ask for help. I was introduced to Instagram at a young age and begged my parents for the app before my wish was finally granted when I was on my 10th birthday. I was in 4th grade. Almost immediately, I discovered social media's negative impacts, but I wasn't sure how to handle it. By the time I turned 12, Snapchat became my holy grail. I'm not sure why I wanted it. All I knew is that all my friends had it, so I wanted it too. I didn't fully understand that people took their lives because of the things that would happen to them through a glass screen. And I was confused. Why suddenly did the thing I want so bad cause me more pain than I already felt? Within those years, I adopted the thoughts of darkness and welcomed them with open arms, not taking the time to identify and find the culprit: social media. With every swipe, double tap, and snap, I became desensitized to my constant feelings of self-hatred, and instead, it became my new normal. It begs the question, how can something so unphysical cause the most pain? And to dig deeper, how bad and how often does something have to happen, does something have to hurt for you not to feel it anymore? In the past 2 minutes that I've been speaking, you all have learned that I didn't have the most positive self-image. On the surface, I was intelligent, creative, and mature for my age. But internally, there was a black hole that sucked every ounce of self-love that I had, and it eventually got patched with insecurity, which was buried with the burden of upholding others' image of me. I only liked myself because people validated me. I only liked myself because after every simple Instagram post, I got a few more likes than the last. And then I slowly became obsessed with the numbers, comparing them to my friends and especially my older sister who I used to idolize. I would ask myself questions. How did they get more followers than I did? How did they get more likes than I did? How did they have so many friends on Snapchat? How did they get their Snap score so high? The obsession and curiosity grew into an addiction in my early high school years. I had been fighting my suicidal thoughts for years, arguing with the thoughts in my mind and just considering if living another day was worth it. I became so lost inside that identity became foreign to me. And as morbid as it sounds, you can't wish death on someone who already wants to die. You would just be adding fuel to the fire. I had convinced myself that if others hated me as much as I did, what was the point? As I matured, the error of my questions pointed less at other people, and I decided to point it at myself. I stopped blaming my agony on others and softened my gaze when I looked back at myself in the mirror. In October of 2020, I finally asked myself, why do I care so much? It didn't occur to me until then that I was giving social media the power to control my emotions. Instagram became a world of fear and distress for me during the pandemic. Sorry, guys. I felt increasingly alone and lost every time I closed out of Snapchat. Don't even get me started on TikTok. I inherited imposter syndrome and a fear of missing out through what I saw on social media. I grew into a routine that hurt me, and every time I turned to my phone, I was eager to see what would hurt me next. I carried my cross and covered my insecurities with a smile all this time. A smile that hid years of suicidal thoughts that grew more persuasive at each shuddering breath drawn from my earth-shattering but silent cries for help, which erupted from my absolute disdain I had for myself as a 12-year-old girl. I wanted to offer a gift that I swore up and down that everyone would appreciate: my silence, invisibility, and obedience. But I didn't know then that the best gift I could ever give to anyone was to live loudly, shine brightly, and passionately. Oh, the liberation I felt when I deleted Snapchat for good. While fighting with my own negative thoughts in my dark days, I was also fighting with God. He was telling me to stay when all I wanted to do was go. But he kept me here because he knew my purpose was greater than the likes and followers I had on Instagram. I learned to appreciate my own existence outside of my life on social media so others could too. I had to understand that I was made to live instead of hide. During the pandemic, the isolation, fear, and worry that I and possibly others were experiencing moved me to do something about it. At 15, I was still learning how to openly talk about the way I felt, and what better way to do that than open a platform for youth so they could do it too. I created a safe haven for teens and youth everywhere to speak on what is most important to them, and I named it Perfect Timing Podcast. Through conversations about entrepreneurship, leadership, and human rights, and most importantly, mental health, I've been able to break the barrier. For the past 3 years, interviewing the guests on my podcast have become therapeutic, as I learned after every episode that I wasn't alone. This international podcast I created is proof of how I decided to forgive myself for every negative thought and word I shared with my own, and the shadow that I casted upon myself, as it wasn't a result of anything but being perfectly human. I turned what caused me most anxiety, pain, and fear into the reason why I kept going. It became my why. So as I close, I want to pronounce that I have a new duty, genothis yatin, which is Greek for know thyself. No matter how many people I reach, the praise I receive, and the negativity I face through a glass screen, I will continue to know myself and why I decided to fight the loneliness epidemic that teens fight every day. It's crazy to think that the voice that I used to hate became my own remedy and saved my life. My why is to continue to be a voice for those that lost theirs and to be the reason that more find it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Trisha Prabhu, and I'm a Gen Z anti-hate activist and the founder and CEO of ReThink, a global movement with the mission of tackling cyberbullying and redefining internet culture to be more positive. My journey really started back when I was a 10-year-old, growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. At the time, my community was a predominantly white community, and that meant that I knew from a very young age what it felt like to be excluded, what it felt like to be isolated, what it felt like to be different. That was always very apparent to me. It meant as a kid that I faced some bullying and some remarks, but when we all got phones, that exploded into cyber harassment. I received mean, disparaging remarks from people I often didn't know or from people who were anonymous, so I could not identify them, about the lunches that I brought to school, about my hair, which is normally very curly, very frizzy, about the gods that I worship, about my cultural background. And it was extremely difficult. I was such a confident child. My mom would always say that about me, such a confident child. But when you're cyber harassed and it's constant, right? It's 24/7, it takes that confidence from you. I suddenly felt like I couldn't depend on anyone. I suddenly felt unsure of myself. I became quieter, more reserved. And of course, I was afraid, so I hid it. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't talk to an adult. I didn't talk to a teacher. I didn't talk to a counselor. I hid it and I dealt with it, or at least that's what I told myself. When the abuse finally started to subside, I, like so many victims of cyberbullying, just wanted to forget about it. I didn't want to think about it ever again in my life, and I wanted to move on. But it was later, when I was 13, that one day I came home from school and I happened to read online the story of another young woman from a completely different state who had been cyberbullied for over a year and a half, receiving some of the worst messages I have ever seen. The world would be a better place without you. I hope you drink bleach and die. You are so ugly. And unfortunately, she died by suicide because of that experience. And at 13, reading that story, for me, there were two moments of impact. One was, something is seriously wrong here. This is unacceptable. What is going on? And two, it was a moment of realization for me of, oh, this isn't just a problem that I'm experiencing. I had thought for the longest time, oh, I'm being cyberbullied because there's something wrong with me. Reading that story was a realization of, no, online hate is a silent pandemic affecting youth globally. It's something we've been taught to live with, but that we shouldn't have to, because we deserve an internet that is better than this. And so as a young person, I was fired up, I was frustrated. I felt like there weren't enough youth voices in this space, that we needed more youth at the table. And I was especially frustrated by, what felt like very reactive, outdated solutions to tackle cyberbullying, right? Like simply encouraging youth to tell a parent, we try and try, but we know that those types of solutions often don't work, that young people are scared, that they worry that they might get in more trouble if they say something. And so my vision was, is there some way that I can redesign the internet so that the burden is not on the victim to act, but instead on the bully to pause and think before they say something offensive? So that is what led to the creation of ReThink, which today builds technology that detects cyberbullying before it's sent and gives users a chance to pause, review, and rethink sending it. So we create friction in that communication that young people are having with each other online. The idea is, by giving them that moment to pause, we give them a chance to think about who it is that they want to be online. We give them a chance to set themselves up to be responsible digital citizens, right? Rather than get sucked into a digital environment that is so toxic, that can make it feel like their words don't matter, that can make it feel like there are no consequences, when in fact, as we've thus far absolutely seen, there definitely are very, very real consequences. Building this movement has been so incredibly fulfilling. It's been an opportunity for me to take an experience that I wanted to forget and instead turn it into something positive. It's also illustrated for me the power that we have to invest in common sense solutions, right, that address cyberbullying. ReThink, our research finds, been celebrated by Google and MIT, among other institutions, that alert, 93% of the time, youth aged 13 to 18 that get it, change their mind. It is that simple. And so this idea that, we're stuck with the social media that we have, we're stuck with the internet that we have, we can't possibly do better than this, that's an idea that I reject. I think it's an idea that a lot of us here today reject. So I'm really, really excited and passionate about what we can do moving forward to find these easy, common sense solutions that can make the internet a more safe place for youth, that can make the internet the place that I deserved as a young person and the place that every young person deserves. Thank you.